For thousands of years, humanity has believed that wisdom begins with writing, philosophy, or the rise of great civilizations. But what if the oldest and most powerful knowledge did not come from kings, or scholars, or even gods? So, what if it came from the ancient priests, mysterious figures who walked the earth long before recorded history, carrying teachings so strange, so advanced, that modern science is only now beginning to understand their purpose? Truly, across prehistoric caves, ice age sanctuaries, megalithic temples, and forgotten burial chambers, archaeologists keep encountering the same unsettling pattern. Symbols repeated across continents, rituals performed by tribes who never met, and knowledge that seemed to appear far earlier than human evolution should have allowed. Who were the keepers of this knowledge? In the shadows of Europe's Ice Age caves, there were shamans who painted visions of the cosmos. In the deserts of the Near East, priests aligned monoliths with solstices long before agriculture. In the jungles of the Americas, ancient astronomer priests tracked Venus with mathematical precision. And in the lost civilizations buried beneath rising seas, there may have been teachings far older than all of them. These priests were not simply spiritual leaders. They were early scientists, healers, astronomers, psychologists, and the guardians of survival for prehistoric humans. Some researchers believe they preserved the memory of natural disasters, ice ages, volcanic winters, extinctions that shaped our species. Others argue they carried a deeper purpose, to guide human consciousness itself. Tonight, we follow their footprints. From the depths of Paleolithic caves to the ruins of forgotten temples, we uncover what the ancient priests were trying to teach us, and why their secret knowledge still echoes in every culture on Earth. This is the secret teachings of the ancient priests. To understand the secret teachings of the ancient priests, we must first travel back, far beyond the pyramids, beyond Sumer and Babylon, beyond the world of recorded myth, into the deep prehistory of human evolution. Because long before written language or organized religion, there were already individuals who acted as intermediaries between the visible world and the invisible forces that shaped early human life. These figures appear in almost every prehistoric culture archaeologists have studied. The first clues: Paleolithic sanctuaries. The earliest evidence comes from the Upper Paleolithic period, around 40,000 to 10,000 years ago, when Homo sapiens spread across Europe and Asia, surviving brutal Ice Age climates. Inside caves such as Lascaux, Chauvet, and Altamira, archaeologists found paintings, not random drawings but highly organized symbolic systems. The imagery is astonishing. Massive Ice Age animals, painted with anatomical precision, abstract geometric shapes repeated across continents, human-animal hybrids, possibly representing shamans or spirit guides, star patterns that align with known constellations. These caves were not homes, they were sanctuaries. Many researchers believe that only certain individuals were allowed to enter: early priests or Paleolithic shamans, who used trance rituals, rhythmic drumming, and flickering torchlight to create altered states of consciousness. These rituals may have served purposes vital for survival: predicting weather cycles, guiding migrations, invoking hunting luck, or teaching knowledge about animal behavior. Priests of the Ice Age. Knowledge as survival in the harsh conditions of the Ice Age. Knowledge was not a luxury, it was a matter of life and death. A tribe that understood animal migrations could eat. A tribe that interpreted the sky could prepare for seasonal changes. A tribe that knew medicinal plants could save its wounded. The priests of prehistoric humans, though not priests in the modern sense, may have been the first repositories of knowledge, storing information long before writing existed. Similar roles are found among Neanderthals, who buried their dead with flowers and pigments; Denisovans, whose genetic influence shaped survival in the Himalayas; Homo erectus, who used fire in ways that suggest early ritual behaviors. Every species of prehistoric human had leaders who carried knowledge that guided the group. And those who held this knowledge gained great respect, sometimes even fear. Rise of the megalith builders, Fast forward to the period between 12,000 and 5,000 years ago, when the Ice Age ended and the world's climate transformed. Human populations grew, settled, and built structures that still defy our understanding. Sites such as Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, dated to nearly 12,000 years ago, show organized ceremonial centers built before agriculture. This is shocking because it reverses the story we learned in school. Religion didn't emerge after farming. In some regions, it came first. Towering stone pillars carved with animals and cosmic symbols suggest a class of specialist priests who coordinated rituals and astronomical observations. These early temple builders likely preserved memories of the Ice Age, encoded in mythic symbolism. Ancient priests as early scientists across other regions. The same pattern appears. In Egypt, priests aligned pyramids with stellar movements, especially the rising of Sirius, which predicted the Nile floods. In Mesoamerica, Maya priests tracked Venus with a mathematical accuracy that astonished modern astronomers. In Mesopotamia, Sumerian temple priests created the earliest calendars and devised complex healing systems. In the Indus Valley, archaeologists found standardized weights and advanced urban planning, suggesting a priestly class managing trade and sanitation. In prehistoric Europe, the builders of Stonehenge created an astronomical monument that predicted solstices and eclipses. These cultural leaps did not arise randomly. They grew out of thousands of years of tradition preserved by ancient priesthoods. The transmission of sacred knowledge. One of the most intriguing patterns archaeologists note is the consistency of certain ideas across distant civilizations. Creation emerging from darkness. A great flood or disaster resetting humanity. The world tree or world mountain linking heaven and earth. Sacred numbers like 3, 7, and 12. Rituals of burial, sacrifice, or symbolic rebirth. Some scholars argue these similarities emerge independently, shaped by human psychology and survival needs. But others suspect a deeper root, that prehistoric humans carried a shared core of ancient teachings, passed orally for tens of thousands of years. This idea is controversial, yet the evidence is growing. Archaeological puzzles and lost civilizations. There are sites that simply do not fit the timeline of human evolution as we understand it. During Kuyu, the vast underground city in Turkey, Naphtali, a desert stone circle aligned to star patterns older than Stonehenge, the Yonaguni Monument, an underwater structure near Japan, Tiahuanaco, a high-altitude Andean site with mysterious stonework, the Sphinx, whose erosion patterns suggest far older dates. These structures contribute to theories about lost civilizations, cultures that preserved knowledge during the Ice Age and passed it to later societies. Whether these civilizations truly existed or were simply advanced local groups, one thing is clear. Their priesthoods held knowledge that far exceeded what we expect for their time. Why this matters for human evolution. Studying ancient priests is not just about understanding rituals. It is about understanding how humans survived. The evolution of prehistoric humans, from Neanderthals to modern Homo sapiens, was shaped by catastrophic climate changes, waves of extinction, shifts in food supply, migrations across continents. Priests, shamans, and knowledge keepers may have been the anchors that allowed groups to adapt. They taught survival techniques, preserved ecological memory, predicted disasters, and gave people a sense of order in a chaotic world. In other words, evolution wasn't just biological, it was cultural, and priests were its architects. To begin uncovering the secret teachings of the ancient priests, we must first understand what these early knowledge keepers actually did, how they thought, how they learned, and how they translated the unpredictable forces of nature into systems that could guide entire communities. Because contrary to popular imagination, the ancient priest was not a quiet figure sitting in meditation. He was a strategist, a scientist, a survivor, and often the only person who stood between life and extinction. The first lesson, reading the world like a book before writing existed. Prehistoric humans used the world itself as their library. The priests were the ones who learned to read that library. Imagine a small Ice Age tribe migrating across the tundra. They carry what little they have, wrapped in hides, moving through a landscape filled with mammoths, cave lions, woolly rhinos, and shifting glaciers. In such a world, information is priceless. Where will the herds move next season? How do we avoid the territory of predators? Where do edible roots grow in winter? Which plants heal wounds, and which ones kill? The ancient priest was the one who remembered. He learned patterns over decades, sometimes from elders who learned them decades before. Through careful observation, he discovered cycles in nature, lunar rhythms, animal behavior, plant life, the position of the sun at crucial moments of the year. This stored memory formed the earliest teachings. When archaeologists examine cave paintings, bone carvings, or even the arrangement of stones around ancient campsites, they now see these markings not as decorations, but as knowledge systems, mnemonic tools for priests to pass vital instructions to the next generation. The rituals that preserved memory. Every ritual had a purpose. What looked like spiritual ceremonies may have been encoded survival lessons. Imagine a night deep in a Paleolithic cave. A priest, face covered in charcoal, begins to beat a hollow bone drum. The tribe watches as flickering firelight makes animals on the cave walls appear to move. The priest's chant echoes, telling stories of creatures they must hunt, seasons they must survive, and dangers they must avoid. Today, we might call this myth. But back then, it was education. Rituals preserved memory in an era without writing. By weaving knowledge into story, symbol, and emotion, priests ensured that even children would remember what mattered. Anthropologists studying hunter-gatherer societies note that stories are often filled with supernatural elements, not because people were naive, but because the supernatural makes information unforgettable. So, when a prehistoric priest told a child, "The spirit of winter sleeps inside the cave of the northern wind," he was actually warning. When the wind shifts north, prepare for a deadly freeze. Myth was not fantasy. Myth was survival. Mastery of fire, the oldest sacred technology. To modern people, fire is ordinary. But to prehistoric humans, fire was nothing less than a miracle. It brought warmth, protection, cooked food, shaped tools, and extended human evolution into the night. It is no surprise that priests became the guardians of fire. Many archaeological sites show dedicated fire pits placed in ceremonial positions, sometimes at the center of caves, sometimes surrounded by arranged stones or carved symbols. In some Ice Age communities, it appears only certain individuals were allowed to tend or carry flame. The priest who controlled fire controlled the rhythm of the tribe. When they could travel, when they could cook, when they could perform rituals, when they could gather safely in the dark, when they could harden spears or craft tools, fire also became a doorway into altered states of consciousness. Gazing into flame, listening to rhythmic chanting, hunter-gatherer priests entered trances, experiences later mirrored in shamanic cultures worldwide. This was not mysticism for entertainment. It was a method of thinking, a way to understand patterns, access memory, and imagine possibilities. Modern neuroscience even suggests these trance states enhance the brain's ability to make connections, allowing early priests to solve problems that ordinary hunters might not have recognized. Animal knowledge and spirit guides. One of the most distinctive features of prehistoric art is the prominence of animals. Not just mammoths and bison, but hybrid figures, half human, half beast. Some scholars call these therianthropes. Others believe they represent ancient priests themselves, wearing animal skins during rituals. To the prehistoric priest, animals were more than prey. They were teachers. A mammoth taught endurance. A wolf taught cooperation. A raven taught navigation. A cave bear taught territorial wisdom. By observing animals closely, early priests learned strategies that shaped human evolution. Many rituals reenacted these lessons. Shamans in Siberian and Native American traditions still wear antlers or feathers to become the animal during ceremonies, an echo of practices that may date back tens of thousands of years. This is why archaeologists find carved bones depicting dancing animals, masks made of antelope skulls, cave paintings where animals appear larger than life, footprints in caves suggesting ritual dances. Priests treated animals as spiritual allies not out of superstition, but because the natural world was a living textbook, teaching the invisible, sky, stars, and seasons. By the end of the Ice Age, priests were looking upward. Even without telescopes, ancient humans could see the Milky Way stretch across the night sky. They tracked the movement of Sirius, Orion, and the Pleiades. They noticed how the sun shifted along the horizon throughout the year. From these observations emerged the world's earliest calendars. Some archaeologists believe the Lascaux cave may include a star map depicting the Pleiades. Göbekli Tepe's carvings may represent constellations. Stone circles at Nabta Playa in Egypt align with the summer solstice. These alignments were not accidents. They required deliberate planning. Why did prehistoric priests care so much about the sky? Because the heavens told them when. Herds would migrate, rains would fall, rivers would flood, seasons would change, winter would return to survive. They learned to read time itself. This celestial knowledge became sacred. Only priests, those trained from childhood, knew how to interpret it. The first ethics. Keeping the tribe together beyond hunting and astronomy, ancient priests also shaped something uniquely human: morality. Small groups living in harsh environments must avoid conflict to survive. Priests emerged as mediators, storytellers, and moral teachers. They invented rituals for forgiveness, inclusion, coming of age, marriage, death, unity during crisis. These rituals were emotional technologies, ways to maintain cohesion when the environment threatened extinction. Priests taught not only how to survive the world, but how to survive each other. If the first part of the secret teachings involves survival, memory, and understanding nature, then the second part concerns something even more mysterious: how the ancient priests shaped culture, consciousness, and the great mysteries that still puzzle archaeology today. Because as we dig deeper into the archaeological record, one pattern becomes impossible to ignore. These priests did far more than interpret the world. In some cultures, they engineered it. And this leads us into academic debates that remain unresolved to this day. The controversial question: how did priests know so much? Scholars still argue about how prehistoric priests acquired such astonishing knowledge. Aligning structures with solstices thousands of years before formal astronomy, tracking lunar cycles over 18-year periods, understanding medicinal plants and ecosystems spanning hundreds of kilometers, mapping animal migrations with near-perfect accuracy, predicting seasonal changes long before meteorology existed. Some researchers propose a simple explanation: trial and error over generations. But others believe there is more to the story. Theory A: knowledge accumulated through observation. This is the mainstream archaeological view. According to this perspective, nothing mystical occurred. Priests were the most observant individuals in the group, those who remembered patterns, who listened to elders, and who spent years studying the land. Their seemingly supernatural abilities were simply the result of decades of careful observation, social status that allowed specialization, rituals that encoded useful information, oral traditions that preserved data through story. In other words, ancient priests were the scientists of their age, scientists operating without notebooks, but with razor-sharp senses and powerful memory systems. Theory B: priests preserved knowledge from lost cultures. A growing number of researchers challenge the mainstream view. They point to sites like Göbekli Tepe, Jericho, Çatalhöyük, Naphtali, and submerged coastal settlements that predate agriculture. These places indicate that humans were building organized ceremonial centers long before villages or written language. This suggests a possibility. What if the end of the Ice Age erased sophisticated cultures we have barely begun to uncover? This theory, once dismissed as fringe, gains traction as underwater archaeology reveals drowned settlements at depths matching sea levels 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. If true, then the priests of early civilizations may have inherited fragments of far older knowledge systems. Theory C. Priests as psychonauts and early neuroscientists. Another academic camp focuses on psychology. Their hypothesis: ancient priests used trance states induced by darkness, drumming, fasting, or plant-based substances to explore inner consciousness. During these altered states, they may have visualized patterns in nature, made intuitive leaps, strengthened memory, bonded social groups, created symbolic language. These experiences formed the basis of spiritual cosmologies, which later evolved into organized religions. This theory suggests the priests were not just observers of the natural world, but explorers of the inner world, the first to map human consciousness. Theory D. Priests as early political engineers. Finally, some archaeologists argue that priests played a political role. By controlling knowledge, especially knowledge of the sky, they gained influence. If they could predict the solstice, the flood, or the migration of herds, people believed they could control supernatural forces. This created a power structure. Priests as interpreters of divine will. Priests as mediators between the tribe and the cosmos. Priests as architects of early hierarchies in this model. Religion became a tool for organizing increasingly complex societies. Mysteries that still baffle archaeology. As we examine sites across the world, we encounter puzzles that defy easy explanation. These mysteries hint that ancient priests possessed knowledge deeper than we currently understand. 1. The global cataclysm memory. Nearly every ancient culture, whether in Asia, Africa, the Americas, or the Pacific, tells the story of a great flood, fire from the sky, or a world-ending winter. Is this coincidence? Or is it a cultural memory of real events, such as the end of the Ice Age, the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, massive volcanic eruptions, rapid sea level rise? If prehistoric priests witnessed these disasters, their teachings might be warnings encoded in myth. 2. The astronomical alignments. Many sacred structures display precise astronomical functions. Stonehenge tracks solstices. The pyramids align to Orion's belt. The Maya tracked Venus with astonishing accuracy. Nabta Playa predates known Egyptian astronomy. Göbekli Tepe pillars may encode celestial movements. Why would hunter-gatherers care so much about the sky? Some theories propose they believed cosmic cycles governed earthly life. Others argue the alignments are remnants of an ancient science that predates recorded civilizations. 3. Sacred geometry across continents. The same shapes appear in prehistoric art from Europe, Africa, and Australia. Spirals, triangles, spirals, concentric circles, the world tree symbol, handprint clusters. These shared patterns may represent a symbolic language older than writing, one taught by priests to transmit knowledge across generations. 4. The healing traditions. Archaeological evidence suggests that some ancient priests were healers. Neanderthal skeletons show healed fractures that would have required attentive care. Ancient burials reveal herbal residues linked to anti-inflammatory plants. Cave paintings depict figures holding what appear to be medicinal herbs. Priests likely taught how to set broken bones which plants cured fever or pain, how to treat infections, how to perform simple surgeries. This healing knowledge would have made them essential for group survival. 5. The birth of moral philosophy. Early priests may have shaped human ethics itself. Ritual burials from 100,000 years ago indicate compassion and respect for the dead. Symbols carved near graves suggest beliefs in an afterlife. Stories passed by shamans often reinforce cooperation, empathy, and the dangers of selfishness. In this sense, priests were guardians not just of survival knowledge, but of humanity's emotional evolution. Unanswered questions that still haunt the field. Despite decades of research, archaeology cannot yet answer the most provocative questions. How did different cultures independently develop similar cosmologies? Why do sacred numbers 3, 7, 12 appear globally? Did priests intentionally encode scientific knowledge in myth? Were there pre-Ice Age civilizations that passed fragments of knowledge forward? How much of human evolution was shaped not by biology, but by the minds and teachings of ancient priests? Each question remains open. Each question reveals how little we truly understand about our origins. One thing is certain. The ancient priests were far more than ceremonial figures. They were the engineers of consciousness, the architects of meaning, and perhaps the first scientists on Earth. Up to this point, we've explored the archaeology, the science, and the mysteries behind the ancient priests. But to end this journey where it truly matters, we must turn to a deeper and more challenging question. Why does any of this still matter today? Because although the Ice Age has ended, although the mammoths are gone, although we now live in cities illuminated by electricity instead of fire, we are still, in many ways, the same humans who once gathered around a flickering flame to listen to the teachings of our tribe's priest. The world has changed, but our minds, our fears, our hopes are ancient. And buried within the secret teachings of prehistoric priests are lessons that speak directly to us, now, today, in the 21st century. Let us uncover them one by one. Lesson 1. Ancient knowledge was built on observation, not assumption. Prehistoric priests survived because they watched the world, not passively, but with attention sharpened by urgency. They studied the migration of animals, the bloom of plants, the quality of sunlight in each season, the phase of the moon before a storm, the patterns of the sky before winter. Their teachings were grounded in what was real, what they could observe, what they could test against life or death outcomes. In our modern world filled with information overload, this is a powerful reminder. Wisdom begins with observation, not opinion. Before believing, we must see. Before speaking, we must understand. Before acting, we must learn from the world as it truly is. This simple principle guided our ancestors through the Ice Age, and it can guide us through the complexity of our daily lives. Lesson 2. Community is a survival technology. In every archaeological excavation of prehistoric humans, from Neanderthals to modern Homo sapiens, we see the same pattern. Survival was never individual. It was collective. Ancient priests used ritual not to create superstition, but to create unity. A tribe divided would die. A tribe united could overcome famine, predators, even climate change. Their stories gave people a shared identity. Their ceremonies created bonds. Their moral teachings prevented conflict. In our era, where isolation, anxiety, and disconnection are rising, this message feels almost prophetic. Humans survive when they stand together. Humans fail when they drift apart. If the ancient priests taught anything, it is that no one survives alone. Community is not optional. It is one of humanity's oldest, most sacred survival tools. Lesson 3. Myth was a technology for memory. Ancient priests used myth the way we use books, videos, or databases. Myth was an operating system for the human mind. A story is easier to remember than a list. A symbol is more powerful than a sentence. An emotion lasts longer than instructions. This is why prehistoric myths survived tens of thousands of years, because they were built to be unforgettable. Today, we dismiss myths as primitive or irrational, but the truth is far more interesting. Myths were the first psychology. They encoded emotional truths, survival principles, and social ethics. Reflecting on this, we might ask ourselves, what stories shape our modern world? What myths, new or old, do we still live by? Even today, nations, companies, religions, and individuals rely on narratives to make sense of life. We are not so different from our ancestors in the cave sanctuaries. Lesson 4. The sky teaches us perspective. Why did ancient priests obsess so deeply over the heavens? Because the sky is the longest story humanity can read. Every night, prehistoric humans gazed upward and realized they were part of something vast, mysterious, and eternal. This cosmic perspective shaped their ethics, their rituals, and their understanding of time. It taught them. Seasons change, stars return, cycles repeat. Nothing lasts forever. Everything has a pattern. In a modern world overwhelmed by urgency and noise, this ancient lesson is still relevant. When life feels chaotic, look up. The stars will remind you of the patterns that outlast your problems. Perspective is wisdom. Perspective is calm. Perspective is survival. Lesson 5. Knowledge carried responsibility to the ancient priests. Knowledge was not a trophy, not a weapon, not a tool for personal gain. Knowledge was a burden, something carried for the sake of the tribe. This mindset stands in stark contrast to modern attitudes, where information is often used for personal advantage or social status. But prehistoric priests taught something different. If you know something that can help others survive, you have a duty to share it. Imagine applying this principle today. Scientists, teachers, leaders, creators, anyone who knows something valuable becomes responsible not just to themselves, but to everyone around them. The ancient priests remind us that wisdom without compassion is meaningless. Lesson 6. Humanity has survived every catastrophe. So far, ice ages, volcanic winters, mass extinctions. Periods when the global population of Homo sapiens may have fallen below just a few thousand individuals. And yet, here we are. The teachings of ancient priests preserved hope, resilience, and continuity during the most terrifying moments in human evolution. Their message through time is simple. We survive. We adapt. We continue. As our modern world faces climate instability, digital fragmentation, and global uncertainty, remembering the resilience of our prehistoric ancestors can be grounding, even comforting. We are the descendants of those who endured everything the earth could throw at them. Their teachings live in us. Lesson 7. The search for meaning is ancient and necessary ultimately. The most profound teaching of the ancient priests is not about astronomy or healing or survival. It is about the human need for meaning. Prehistoric humans did not create rituals because they were weak. They created rituals because they were human. They sought to understand death, to explain suffering, to find comfort, to create purpose, to make sense of chaos. These questions remain unchanged. Our technologies are new, but our hearts are ancient. And just like our ancestors, we are still searching for meaning in a universe that often feels indifferent. Perhaps that is why the stories of ancient priests resonate so strongly today. In the end, the past is a mirror. When we study prehistoric humans, lost civilizations, Ice Age shamans, Neanderthals, and early priesthoods, we are not just exploring archaeology, we are exploring ourselves. Because we carry their fears, we carry their intelligence, we carry their desire for connection, survival, and meaning. Their teachings, though shaped in caves and sanctuaries, in deserts and jungles, in rituals and firelight, still echo in our modern world, softly but unmistakably. The past is not distant. The past is alive in our minds. For tens of thousands of years, long before writing, before cities, before kings and empires, human beings survived because of a small group of individuals, the ancient priests, the knowledge keepers, the memory carriers of prehistoric humanity. They stood at the intersection of the visible world and the invisible patterns that shaped life. They interpreted the sky. They read the earth. They listened to the animals. They remembered the past. They predicted the future. And they did all of this not for wealth, not for power, but because, without their teachings, their people would not survive. Their legacy is immense, but subtle. It's not preserved in books or monuments or grand temples. Instead, it lives in our myths, our rituals, our symbols, our moral instincts, our curiosity, our desire for meaning. When we look at prehistoric humans, at Ice Age shamans in deep caves, at the astronomer priests of the early Near East, at the ritual leaders of ancient tribes, we see the earliest version of ourselves. These people were not distant, primitive creatures. They were humans facing the same cosmic questions we still ask today. What is our place in the universe? How do we survive the unknown? What happens when we die? How do we live together without destroying each other? How do we make sense of chaos and suffering? The ancient priests built the first answers to these questions. Their teachings form the foundation of human evolution, not in a biological sense, but in a psychological and cultural one. They were architects of meaning, engineers of memory, scientists of survival, guides of the human spirit. And yet, even now, the archaeological record leaves us with haunting mysteries. Why do sacred symbols repeat across continents? How did prehistoric people develop such precise astronomical knowledge? Why do flood myths, cosmic cycles, and sacred numbers appear globally? Did a forgotten Ice Age civilization pass its teachings forward? Or is there something deeper in the human mind that naturally seeks these patterns? We do not have the answers. Not yet. But perhaps that is part of the beauty of our origins. The more we uncover, the more questions appear, reminding us that humanity's past is not a solved puzzle, but an ongoing journey of discovery. What we can say is this: the secret teachings of the ancient priests are not confined to caves or ruins. They are not lost to time. They are woven into the very structure of who we are. Every time we look at the stars and feel something indescribable, every time we tell a story to pass on wisdom, every time we gather in community to celebrate, mourn, or heal, every time we search for meaning in suffering, we are continuing a lineage older than civilization itself. The priests of prehistory have disappeared into the shadows of time, but their voices, soft, distant, and ancient, still whisper through the symbols they left behind, whispering the same message they gave to our ancestors. Observe the world. Understand its patterns. Stand together. Remember the past. Seek meaning. Do not fear the unknown. And always, always, pass the knowledge forward. Because in the end, the greatest secret they taught is one that echoes across the entire story of human evolution. We survive by learning. We evolve by understanding. We continue by remembering. And so the question for us today is simple. Do we really know everything about our ancestors? Or have we just begun to scratch the surface of humanity's oldest mysteries? If you found this journey into the ancient world thought-provoking, make sure to like this video, leave a comment with your theories, and subscribe for more deep-dive explorations into prehistory, human evolution, archaeology, and the great mysteries that shaped our species. Our next discovery awaits.